Good afternoon, and welcome to the
We're
AIB's
not live yet.
And we're live.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the AIB's meeting for today. Today's date is December the 14th, 2023. First of all, I'd like to thank again our staff, our standing staff, all the work that is done over the last month or so as we've gone through an awful lot of things that I think will be of interest for our agenda today, and you'll hear a little bit more about that from our executive director. Let's call the roll and see who's here at this point in time, Rachel.
Yes, Mr. Chair. In addition, we have Vice Chair Kerwin and board members Manco, Lynch, Doss, Robinson, and Stapleton. So all are present.
Thank you very much. We have a fairly full agenda today, and so let's look at that. We'll come back in a moment or two if there's any changes or adjustment to the agenda itself. I want at this point in time to adopt the summary of last month's meeting. I hope that you've had an opportunity to review them and want to make any comments or adjustments or changes to them.
I move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second to the motion?
I second.
It's moved and second that we adopt the meeting summary from last month's meeting. Any questions before we move for the vote? Hearing or seeing none, the motion is now for adoption. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Hearing none, the summary is so adopted. Any revisions to our agenda for today? Let's go through that quickly. Madam Executive Director, would you briefly go through it for us?
Certainly. So we have several speakers signed up for public comment. And then we have the executive director report. We have several blueprint implementation plans up for recommended for approval, and also an update on the remaining two plans that have not been brought to you for approval yet. We have some updated materials and information on the expert review team that MSDE is have already started visiting schools, and we have the 2024 LEA Blueprint Implement Plan Development Guide with the submission dates and criteria for success for your approval. And then finally, we have a presentation from our communications consultants before we adjourn to closed session.
Was that one change from the original agenda that we sent out earlier?
The change, there are a couple of changes in the executive director report. We do have a revised legislative proposals list for your approval. And then under item 4, we had initially thought that we needed to bring the expert review team report back to you all for approval, but after consulting with our counsel, it is already approved, and so it is just an information item.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, we have a couple of speakers for today. Why don't we go to those public comments at this point in time?
Yes, first we have Superintendent from Harford County Public Schools, Dr. Bolson.
Thank you so much. I'll tell you, I never like following Dr. Bedell, so I appreciate you putting me first. Good afternoon, AIB members, Chair Leggett, and Ms. Hayes. Thank you so much for having us here today. Harford County Public Schools absolutely supports the goals and intentions, particularly the spirit of the blueprint. And we have found some amazing successes that have occurred with our students. I would say particularly in the areas of the student supports and workforce, again, particularly around career readiness, just some amazing progress that I feel like we've made as a result of the blueprint. But today I want to talk a little bit about the implementation plan, and I wanted to sort of thank you for this updated plan. We appreciate the growth demonstrated in the relationship that the AIB is experiencing with MSDE. We see kind of better respect for the feedback that was given by districts about the last year's plan. We see, a shared desire to have plans that show more strategic thinking and innovation, that commitment to stakeholder engagement and collaboration. I don't think it's a secret, we had concerns about the way last year's plan rolled out. Just the fact that we've gone from over 100 questions to, under 30 is, it just speaks to the feedback that we gave. I think people last year felt like it was more of an exercise in compliance, and it didn't really leave the room for the type of innovation and deep conversations, being communicated in there in the way that we believe is at the core of the blueprint. And so with that said, again, thank you for this modify. I think this is going to be a far better experience for our teams this year, working toward, completing that template. Specifically, another thing obviously I want to mention is, we appreciate the staggered timeline for submission. This blueprint is not one initiative. It is a monstrous initiative with huge plans, huge parts to it. And we have nearly 150 people on our local planning committees. We have about 30 on each of the committees for each of the 5 pillars. And, they're all working at the same time, but at some point that information all needs to sort of flow back through one place. And the idea that we can sort of work deliberately to chip away at the sort of the monstrous load of, because we don't want this again to just be compliance. We want to make sure you're getting a plan that we've had a chance to think through very carefully, and that, is something that we can address in the stages you've laid out. So I think that definitely, again, is a good reflection of the feedback we had last year. And as you know, there's no secret, particularly those of us in the school system, some of my colleagues, we have suggestions, ways that we believe we can strengthen both the implementation and the impact of the blueprint. But, we appreciate this progress with our collaboration, and we look forward to continuing to collaborate on that front. So with that, looking forward to hearing what others have to say, and looking forward to work with you more in the near future.
Thank you very much, Superintendent.
Dr. Bedell, Superintendent, Anne Arundel County Public Schools.
Hey, thanks for having me here. And Sean, we did not talk. I almost feel like I'm on the verge of saying similar things that you said, but I do want to take this opportunity to make sure that our voice is represented in this conversation. I've made it very clear to everybody that I have spoken to around Blueprint. When I read about the 5 areas within Blueprint, it was part of what attracted me to want to come back to the state of Maryland. I had opportunities to go work in many other school systems around the country, and I felt like what we were working on in Kansas City was called Blueprint 2030, where we were really talking about how do we dismantle the current structure and the current design of the school system, and really make the school system a lot more agile, a lot more flexible, a lot more modern. And I felt like Blueprint its intent is to give us this opportunity to innovate. So I want people to know that here in Anne Arundel County, we believe in the vision, we believe the goals and the objectives of the Blueprint. But I want people to also fully understand that this is a balancing act with budgets, timelines, and structures, because there is a lot to it. It is a huge lift. We're thankful that the AIB and MSDE heard the voices of the Blueprint coordinators, chief financial officers, and superintendents related to timelines and structures associated with the next phase of Blueprint work. Phase 2 plan, it moves beyond a list of compliance questions, and it answers and really focuses us to answer to a format that allows and supports the innovation, which was a big reason why I wanted to come back this way, the innovative thinking and the more open-ended plan format that allows each district to capture their own goals and strategize to actualize Blueprint. And so our goal is to take full advantage of this, from how we want to design the career ladder to what the potential school day could look like in certain schools in order to attract some of our national board certified teachers to go into those schools where they are really needed. Things have to significantly look different. You cannot apply a cookie cutter approach if you want to see this Blueprint work the way that it's supposed to work. And the thing that I've said over and over, throwing money doesn't necessarily solve the issues, because there are community factors, there are historical factors that come into place, and there are some root cause factors that also have to be taken into account. So in order for this to be successful, it's also going to require a major commitment from the community organizations and advocacy groups, in addition to our elected officials. And that's the way that I see it. The deliverable for March 15th also focuses on district and stakeholders engagement and deep reflection, so that we are better prepared to be strategic in our approaches rather than reactive and compliant. As I said earlier, the focus questions related to how our blueprint plans are going to ensure alignment with our own strategic plan, because we have multiple plans and we want to make sure that all of these plans are aligned, that they can talk to each other. So one of the 4 areas that we will focus on in our strategic plan is adherence to the blueprint law, which means that we need to build in career and college readiness indicators on our scorecard. We need to make sure that we have the growth metrics in there, that we're hiring the best teachers, and that we're compensating people appropriately. So we once again appreciate AIB and MSDE in allowing us this space to proactively plan and braid our resources and efforts so that our May submission better reflects strategic thinking and creative approaches to the next 5 years of blueprint. Now, what I will also say, the deliverables for May are streamed and support district level initiatives that will propel our work towards blueprint implementation. And we would have liked more time for this crucial submission, but moving the due date for this section from March to May is more realistic if our goal is to be leaders in this national innovative change in education. As I close, I want to remind everybody that this remains a big lift, and we need AIB and MSDE to understand the importance of long-range planning and providing ample time for school districts to do their best thinking and to use Blueprint as a leverage to innovate our schools. We appreciate the valuable partnership that we have with AIB and MSDE, and know that we are supporting each other for the ultimate benefit of our students and communities. Thank you.
Thank you. I think what both of you have said speaks well to the fact that we've met with you guys, I think, with superintendent on a number of occasions, as well as a number of other stakeholders, and we're listening, trying to continue this dialogue, because as you've just stated in the previous speaker, we literally cannot get there unless we're working in a cooperative way. So thank you for your testimony. Hopefully we'll continue this dialogue and look forward to talking to you again very soon. Are there any other questions, comment from the staff or from the board? Hearing or seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay, we'll now go to the Executive Director's report. Executive Director Heiss, please forward. We'll move forward on that matter.
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to try to be brief because we do have a lot to cover in today's meeting, and I will and then happy to take questions. If I could just, Dr. Bedell, there we go. Okay. Okay. So first I want to give you a staffing update. So we have hired 2 additional policy analysts who will begin at the just after the new year. So we're looking forward to that. And they more about them at the next board meeting in January, but they have a lot of experience and expertise that covers pillars 1, 2, and parts of 3. So we have a good amount of additional experience and expertise. We're moving forward with that. We will be posting for additional policy analysts and the data research analyst position in the spring. In addition, the communications and outreach director position should be posted today. So we just got word that it should be posted live today. And as soon we will add that to our website and send that information out to our email list as well. So it's going to be posted until into the first week of January, so that we could, if there are folks that are, perhaps contemplating a change in jobs over the holidays, they will see this opportunity. So please encourage anyone to share that. Yes, Dr. Kerwin.
Yeah, Rachel, thinking ahead in the agenda a little bit and seeing the report of our communications consultants, there is an enormous communication agenda that they are proposing. It's daunting when you look at all that is being suggested. So my question is, will there be other staff that will report to this communication person, or is this going to be a single individual operation?
So it is, in terms of the direct responsibility for communications and outreach per se, it will be the one person, but pretty much everyone on the team is supporting communication and outreach. And that will, I think, continue to be the case. So while it is, no one will report to them, the team will be available to work with them and support, particularly, well, both with social media and with, outreach with stakeholders, obviously.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. The next item is just an advisory committee's update. Just wanted to share that there have been some really great meetings that we have the advisory committees for each of the 4 substantive pillars, 1 through 4, and they've been having really thoughtful agendas and conversations and discussions. We recently submitted a joint chairman's report, and which I'm going to touch on a little more, related to pre-kindergarten, and the advisory 1 members of Pillar 1 Advisory Committee were, participated in some of that work and provided some great input and feedback. And next week, Pillar 3 Committee will be meeting again and discussing the college and career ready standard, and again are having some really helpful discussions. And as we move into 2024, we'd like to start to bring specific reports or guide updates, but updates from the Pillar 1, 2, 3, and 4 committees more specifically, and focus on one of the pillars, each meeting or every other meeting, depending on how full our agendas are, so that we can really make sure that the board is aware of some of the work they're doing and the ideas and that they're uncovering, and suggestions, as well as for the members of the public who perhaps aren't following the advisory committees, although all those meetings are held publicly and the video is archived on the website, but just to make sure that their voices are a little more elevated in our work, especially as they're now really, it's like with everything, it takes a little while to get up and running, and now they're just really, they're really doing great work. So any questions on advisory committees? Okay. The next item is the technical assistance grant update. And this is a good connection to some of the comments of the superintendents earlier. The strategic facilitators that are part of the technical assistance grant. 22 of the 24 school systems have a strategic facilitator, plus the CTE committee that they have been working with pretty intensely since, I would say, the end of October. And we're really already starting to see the value of the strategic facilitators in working with the school systems and helping them think through as a sort of an outside perspective on it, coming in with fresh eyes, where the challenges and the barriers to implementation of the blueprint are. And yesterday we had there are monthly, what we call community of practice meetings with the strategic facilitators and AIB and MSDE staff. And yesterday's meeting also included blueprint coordinators and just some really
Let me interrupt you 1 second because others may not be familiar with the technical assistance. So why don't you step back 1 second and explain why we have them and the process for how we're going to utilize them before we get to what they're actually doing.
Sure. Happy to do that. So it actually, as an outgrowth of our follow-up work and feedback that we received from the school systems and the blueprint coordinators around the 2023 implementation plan process and the template that was used, as well as the feedback from the AIB reviewers and the MSDE reviewers around the quality of the responses in LEA plans, and sort of the more, as the superintendent said, more compliance-based responses than really strategic thinking or planning. Staff recommended to you all that we invest in what we're calling strategic facilitators. So these are individuals who have strategic planning and coaching experience, and who also have education expertise. So they sort of we're not expecting them to be blueprint experts, but they are familiar with education. It's not a foreign world to them. But they're really highly skilled in strategic planning, strategic thinking, and systems change, importantly, very importantly, because that's the big part of what we're trying to do here with the blueprint. So the strategic facilitators, each LEA was offered the opportunity to select a consultant to work with from an approved vetted list that AIB developed. And I think we had we had many applicants. And of course, 22 LEAs and then the CTE committee. So 23 strategic facilitators, although several of them have more than one. They're allowed to have up to 2 LEAs plus CTE committee. They've now, it was a process of writing a plan, an initial project plan, and now their final project plans have been submitted, and we're in the process of reviewing those in terms of what the focus of their work will be with their strategic facilitator, who will be with them through the end of the fiscal year, so through June. And so part of the extended timeline that we're proposing, that we're going to get to on the agenda, was really related to giving the LEAs and the strategic facilitators more time to do the system level thinking and the strategic thinking before we ask them to sort of dig into the details again, not at the level that we did in last year's template, but before they start digging in, so that it's all tied together. And so the strategic facilitators have been working with their LEAs now for about a month and a half, and starting to really meet with the various blueprint implementation teams in the LEAs, bring them together, because many of the districts, and I think it was Superintendent Bolson who mentioned, they have a different committee for each pillar. And part of the work that the strategic facilitators are helping to bring is, that you need to think of it as a system also, and not just, what you have to do within each pillar. So we heard some really, really encouraging feedback from the strategic facilitators and from the blueprint coordinators yesterday, that they really see the value in the strategic facilitators, which I think wasn't necessarily the case on the beginning, and that it really is going to help them think, put the pieces together of the blueprint together more.
Thank you.
And what we'd like to do is actually come back in January and sort of give you a more formal presentation around the strategic facilitators and the technical assistance work, rather than just as an update. So it'll be an item on the agenda, hopefully in January.
Right. And we have them all but 2 schools?
School
Thank you.
systems, yes. The next item is the Blueprint Comprehensive Plan. And just to let everyone know that it will be posted on the website as soon as possible, hopefully next week. And the printed copies are going to be available in early January, and we're going to mail them out. So if you received, to those watching, if you received a hard copy in the mail of the first plan, you're going to receive a hard copy in the mail of the second plan. And then we also will have hard copies available through at the hopefully the Legislative Information Desk in Annapolis will be willing to provide, we provide them to them, and then anyone can go get a hard copy. And the next item is an update on the literacy expert teams. And this is, as you all recall, the board approved with the State Board of Education, utilizing a portion of the expert review team funds to focus on early literacy, and provide experts to go into each of the 24 LEAs over the rest of the school year, in order to really get a good objective review of where school districts and schools are in terms of early literacy instruction and instructional systems. And at this point, MSDE and AIB have been working with the Mayo Center at College Park and Morgan State University to support the literacy experts process, and to identify experts to be used in these teams. And so that the planning work is happening now, and the goal is for the literacy expert teams to begin their first visits potentially in late January, more likely probably early February. But that's the timeline. And then there's a plan to be able to get into all 24 districts by the end of the school year. And then there will be a report for each LEA with the findings of the visits and any recommendations. And those will come to both the AIB and the State Board and the State Department of Education. And we'll use that information to potentially adopt changes to the Blueprint Comprehensive Plan next year. Guidance for LEAs, policies. The state board might, has many tools and levers at its disposal. So that's the goal, is, to see if we need to make any changes in
Okay.
what we're asking LEAs to do. The
What,
la- yes.
correct it again? The
Sorry.
time frame.
So the 24 systems will be visited before the end of the school year.
Okay.
So all 24.
There any questions or comments reference to where we are? Again, I want to thank our board members and staff, and also MSDE and its leadership staff, Dr. Crawford and Dr. Wright and others who have helped us to get this proposal off the ground. Hopefully we'll get it moving and have everything responded to by the end of the academic year. And it will give us a new insight into what is happening within our schools and how we can find better ways in which to invigorate the emphasis as it relates to literacy. But it has taken us a little bit of time to make sure that we get this right. And I think that we're headed in the right direction. And as indicated, we should get to every school system at least by the end of academic 24, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. By the end of the school year. Yes. And then just as a reminder, if this process is productive and constructive, I think and the model may need to be tweaked, but the concept is to focus on elementary math,
Right.
elementary and middle school math next school year.
Thank you again for your work in that. I think we have the legislative proposal.
Rachel, before we leave this, a real quick question. I mean, one of the values of this exercise, I think, and I want to see if I'm on the right track here, is that this assessment by Mile of these literacy plans will give us some really solid criteria upon which we can approve or reject the literacy plans that come forth from the LEAs. I mean, I think the disturbing thing we've discovered is that the literacy instruction is all over the map around the state. And we even know that some of our teacher preparation programs are all over the map and in preparing our teachers. And so I think the value of this, I mean, this is a very highly reputable group that has done a lot of research on what makes literacy teaching and learning most effective. And so I'm hopeful that these criteria, and we're going to have to be, I think, very tough-minded in deciding whether or not to approve these plans when they come forth. And I think the report from Mile will give us some very solid basis upon which to make those decisions.
Dr. Curran, could you tell us, because I think some of our listeners and people who listen to this may not know what MILE means. We know
Yeah.
what it is.
Oh, yeah. Well, so MILE is the Maryland Initiative on Literacy and Equity. And what's happened is that a group of faculty and experts on literacy at the University of Maryland College Park and at Morgan State, drawing upon people from cognitive science, education. These are people who devote their life to studying and understanding the best practices in literacy education. So they created this initiative. And what's, I think, impressive is that College Park, the university had this big university-wide competition where units and multidisciplinary efforts were invited to make proposals that were going to get a significant amount of funding, I think over $1 million. And it was a really intense competition. 5 rose to the fore out of this, and these 5 were externally reviewed. They weren't just internal. So these went out to experts around the country to assess. And the mile proposal was one of these 5 that got the funding from the College Park campus, but it is a collaboration with Morgan State, and I think it's an entity that is going to be very helpful to MSDE and to AIB and the LEAs in getting literacy education in the state on the right track.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I see a couple of hands. I do just want to clarify something. So the Mile Center is absolutely involved in this work, but the literacy experts are going to be, there's a process to select them. So they will not just be internal to the center. They will be.
Yeah, I didn't mean to imply that.
No, I know. Yeah. I just wanted to, so there will be a process for identifying, selecting the literacy experts that will be on the teams. I think Mr. Manco's hand was up first based on the order on my screen.
Yeah, I just wanted to reinforce what Dr. Kerwin said, and also, you know, I think for me, one of the things that I'm very optimistic and excited about with the expert reviewers going into the schools and the classrooms is, you know, oftentimes, you know, and this is common across education, but, you know, I think there are often very solid, very lofty plans, but where things get really bogged down is in implementation. And, you know, what is written in the plan is not necessarily what is happening day to day in the classrooms. And I think, you know, having these expert reviewers that are not only able to go through and look at the literacy plan, talk to individuals that are working at the district office that are, you know, that are establishing what the expectations and protocols are around literacy, but more so going into the classrooms and seeing if that is translating to the classroom level and to the students, I think is something that's really promising about this initiative and that I'm excited about. So, you know, just wanted to reinforce that, and you know, hats off to Chair Leggett, because I know this is something that he has really been passionate about and trying to focus on, and you know, hopeful that we will learn a lot, not just about how districts are engaging with literacy, but really how it's getting implemented and translated at the student and classroom level.
And another hand up, Rachel.
Thank you. Yes, Member Stapleton.
Hi, folks, and I apologize for being off camera. I'm in transit, but I should be in camera soon. I just had a question or clarification of something that Vice Chair Kerwin mentioned. He said that the result of this would be a rubric which we could use to compare the plans to, but I was under the impression that it would not necessarily be a rubric, but the teams would work with the LEAs to come up with a compliant plan. So maybe I was confused on that point.
Just for clarification, I didn't say they would have a rubric. I said they would assess, they would provide an assessment of these plans.
But I think, Member Stapleton, that once we've gone through the complete process, that is working with the expert reviewers, Miles, and with the LEAs, it may be possible for us to come up with something that we're all clear to understand and working from the same page, at least as close as possible, so that we will not have, we will have some clear understanding in terms of commonality of things that are best practices. That's at least one of the objectives that I think could come out of that. But once all of that has been completed, including the local boards of education.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And if I could just add, so the draft literacy plans are due in January from the LEAs, to the extent that they haven't already submitted them, so that they're available to the literacy expert teams as they are prepping to meet with the LEAs and visit the schools, and then also share feedback around the draft plans with them to support the content of those plans for when they finally submit them on June 30th.
Thank you.
Okay, so the last item in this section of the agenda is the legislative recommendations of the board for the 2024 session. And last month you approved a list and gave some feedback. And so I wanted to follow up on that. Plus we have an additional recommendation to make. So
We've already approved this, right?
So there are two changes to this. The for item 2 under identified in the Blueprint Comprehensive Plan update. So the first and do you all want me to share my screen?
Yeah, please.
Or do you have the document? Share the screen. Okay. Can someone give me permission to share my screen? Thank you. Okay. Oops. Wrong document. Sorry about that. Let me see. There it is. Yes. Okay. Oh, no. Oh, okay. I think that is the right document, isn't it? My apologies. I can't see what I'm sharing. That's the problem. Okay. Are you seeing the draft proposals?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So the first change is to item 2. And I just wanted to follow up because we had some discussion about whether this was necessary to bring to the legislature for approval. And after further conversation with MSDE and with our council, it is necessary to modify the pre-K expansion grant statute to allow pre-K expansion grantees to receive a grant if they don't meet the high quality staffing standards currently. And that is the change that the legislature intended to make in last year's legislation, but it was not, there needs to be further change to the law. So we do need to keep number 2 on our list. And then in addition to that, under additional, there is a second item that is being proposed. And this comes out of the Joint Chairman's report that was submitted earlier this month to the General Assembly regarding pre-kindergarten providers and making recommendations to improve the availability of alternative certification pathways and alternative ways to meet the high quality standards and in the law. And one of those recommendations, and it's the only one that requires a change to statute, is to expand the loan assistance repayment program for educators, which is called the Nancy Grasmick Loan Assistance Repayment Program, to include specifically include early childhood educators, teachers and teaching assistants, and from not just public school systems, but also private providers, so that they have the opportunity to have that. Let me let.
What was the intent in the original legislation, Executive Director?
For the loan assistance repayment program? The statute, this is a program that has been around for a number of years, to help educators repay student loans associated with earning,
Now, what's the intent as it related to private providers?
So what the blueprint is calling for, all pre-K teachers to be certified in early childhood education, and which requires a different additional education. And it also, for teaching assistants, requires them to either currently they have to have a high school degree, and under the blueprint and under the changes in the law that we just discussed, by 27-28 school year, they have to have earned either what's called a CDA, a Child Development Associate degree, or a 2-year associate's degree. And so the loan assistance repayment program is just an additional way to help teachers and teaching assistants afford to that investment in their career. There are other.
What I'm asking a question as relates to private providers that it's been changed here now. I'm trying to get at to. I know we have it for everyone else, but for private providers, what, if anything, was the original legislative intent as related to private providers?
I understand the question now. So, the blueprint's goal is a mixed delivery system where both public and private providers are participating in our publicly funded full-day pre-K program. And so having private providers participate in the full-day pre-K program and having the high-quality staff in the private providers is a critical element to the blueprint and is part of the intent. Okay.
Then why do we have to have a legislative change to that? I'm not sure I fully understand.
They're not currently eligible to participate in the Nancy Grasmick LARP program.
Does it exclude them, or what? I'm not sure. I thought in some way, listening to what we talked about before, that they will be included in the original language. So it's
only public school teachers. Public.
What does it actually say? Because I'm confused why we should have to make a change for something that I thought was already included.
The loan assistance repayment program was an existing pre-blueprint. It existed before the blueprint. And so it is limited to public school.
No, but what does the language say about it? Does it say only public schools or what?
Yes. Yes.
Well, that is just an over. Because we're asking the private sector to be partners with us. And yet, for some reason, we have this exclusion. I was under some.
That's why it was just an oversight. And that's why I wanted to bring it up and add it to the proposals for the session.
So that's why, in terms of explanation, that in some way that was the original intent, that they would be included, but for some reason there was an oversight. And what we're simply doing is to correct what was the original intent to begin with. So we're not significantly altering stuff. We're just correcting an oversight that should have been included originally.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Everybody fully understand that now?
Great. So this document will be part of our final submission for our annual report, which we are in the process of finalizing so that we can share it with you. Part of the requirement for the annual report is to report on progress of the blueprint. And in the first report, we focused on sort of just process and procedures that we've been able to do to support blueprint implementation, but we wanted to incorporate actual data in this annual report. And so we have been able to receive data from the State Department of Education. And, we're actually, getting some additional data, almost every day now. So really appreciate the partnership there. And so we're incorporating progress data where it exists, which is quite a few places, into the report, which is why it's taking a little bit longer. But we will be getting that draft to you and getting that into the governor and the General Assembly before the end of the year.
Okay.
Is everyone, I don't know if we have a motion to approve the revisions to the legislative 2024 legislative proposals?
Yep. There's a motion to approve the revised legislative proposal. Your motion?
I'll move it.
And move the second to the motion?
Second.
Okay. All right, there's properly moved and second that we approve the revised legislative proposal for 2024. Then a question, the discussion, reference to the motion. Hearing none, the motion is now ready for adoption or approval. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion is so approved. Executive Director?
Yes, the next item on the agenda is the 2023 Blueprint Implementation Plan. So we have two plans that staff is recommending approval to the board today. And I just one is for the Maryland Higher Education Commission, and the other is the Consortium on Coordinated Community Supports. And just want to provide a little background around the process we've been following, and then ask Implementation Plan Director Emma Pellerin to provide a little more specific information on our findings and feedback for each of them. So as you know, these plans were submitted in March, and the AIB staff and some of our consultants have been since, I would say, July, reviewing those plans pretty intensely in the beginning, and then meeting with the agencies to ask questions, provide feedback, and share, share maybe challenges, and also request additional information or responses to questions. And particularly with the Maryland Higher Education Commission, similar to, we talked about this in October related to the Career and Technical Education Committee, there has been change in leadership at the agency since when the plan was written and submitted. And so some of the discussions with the secretary and the staff was really around sort of their plans to develop their plan. If that, and so what we what we've done is we've really tried to provide very specific feedback around where additional information is needed in their 2024 plans as part of the feedback. And then we do plan to provide much more technical assistance. We're very focused on the LEAs in the first year. And so we're gonna provide targeted technical assistance to all of the state agencies that will be submitting plans in 2024. And we're also going to develop not a template, but a series of questions similar to what we do for the LEAs to make sure that the plans that they're submitting are providing the information that we need to see. And so with that, Emma, can I turn it over to you?
Yes, definitely. Good afternoon, everyone. I am going to stay on camera for as long as possible. I've been having some internet connection issues, so if I pause, then I'll try to go off video, and hopefully we can make that move forward. So I could just highlight a few of the findings from the from MHEC's plan and from the consortium's plan. And I'll go ahead and start with some of the areas of strength and opportunity. And then we'll go for both of the plans, and then we'll go into the areas for growth and improvement, because I think that there's some overlap, particularly in the latter, and we actually saw that across pretty much all plans. But first, with the areas of strength and opportunity for the consortium, we really wanted to highlight the innovative thinking. Well, first of all, their plan is one of the more comprehensive ones that we saw with regards to providing information and really thinking thoughtfully and addressing all of the guidelines and requests for information that the AIB provided for each of the implementation tasks that the consortium is responsible for. So we wanted to highlight that, first of all, that they were very intentional in their thinking and providing us with as much information as possible in their plan related to each implementation task. And we wanted to highlight that. Secondly, as I said, just quickly before, we wanted to highlight their innovative thinking and approach to increasing and expanding stakeholder engagement, particularly with this 4 subcommittee structure that they've established that focuses on establishing the statewide framework for the consortium's work on data collection and analysis and program evaluation, on outreach and community engagement, and in identifying best practices in the delivery of behavioral health and supports. Knowing what the consortium's charge is to expand behavioral health services for students, it's really important that they involve a diverse array of stakeholders, and establishing this subcommittee structure, I think, on these 4 really significant topics is something that's really promising, and we're excited to track that work moving forward and seeing what that looks like and what they're able to produce from that structure. So we wanted to highlight that as well. In addition, their approach, they're following the collective impact model with establishing this hub and spoke model for their community supports partnerships, with having, established agencies and then service providers, the established agencies being, local management boards and health boards that can be the hub of the community supports partnerships, and then these local service providers as the spokes. We think that that will really help address the varied needs of communities and jurisdictions across the state. So we thought that we wanted to highlight that as an innovative approach to the community support partnerships, to ensuring that all students and families and communities are getting the supports that they need and really meeting the charge of the consortium. With regards to MHEC's plan, we saw that their plan provided really good background information about the agency and its history and its advisory councils, and just noting how higher education is organized in Maryland. And we've said this before with other plans, acknowledging that this is a public plan, and that others who may not be familiar with the agency, with the blueprint, will be reading this and helping to establish that baseline understanding of what the agency is doing is significant, and we appreciate that. There were a number of things that pieces of information that they provided in their updated response that did help to address some of the concerns in areas of improvement that we've previously highlighted. This is still an ongoing area of growth, but we appreciated the initiative that they're taking in establishing a stronger working relationship, particularly with the Maryland State Department of Education, by establishing this ad hoc work group that they are organizing, focused on the blueprint implementation and providing guidance on the role of higher education. And they have noted that the AIB will be notified about these work group meetings, and we're excited to participate in those. So, we do acknowledge that there's still room for growth here in identifying how they're working with agencies, but we appreciate them taking the initiative and knowing that this is happening through their updated response. Just other things that we wanted to highlight in their updated response, they noted that they are increasing communication around the teaching fellow scholarships. So that is one big thing, and as well as alternative certification pathways. And they also provided more information about how their state plan on post-secondary education aligns with the blueprint, again, in that updated response. So we wanted to highlight all of those things with MHEC's plan. So, now that we've highlighted some of the areas of strength and opportunity, we do have some areas for growth and improvement, as we did with all the LEA plans, in addition to the CT committee's plan, which was approved in October. And I think that, a commonality across all plans and to varying extents, there's a need for just further narrative and explanation of how the agency sees its role with regards to blueprint implementation and the role that it plays in this ecosystem that's being created to get to the blueprint's expected outcome or outcomes that the agency needs to fulfill, of course, but then this larger vision for the change that we're trying to create for Maryland students long-term. I think particularly, with the consortium, it looked like, we see their long-term planning with regards to these implementation tasks. We'd like to see a little bit more in their updated 2024 plan around their vision of how they're working with other state agencies within this ecosystem for reaching the blueprint's expected outcome. And then, but again, we applaud the innovation that they've already shown with regards to blueprint implementation. With the Maryland Higher Education Commission's plan, we would like to see more evidence of the ambitious strategies that they are employing to reach the blueprint's expected outcome. And again, more explanation of how they are engaging with other agencies to reach that outcome. With MHEC's plan, we would like also further evidence of what they did to engage stakeholders in developing their plan, and would like to see more narrative response and around how they engage stakeholders with their updated 2024 plan. And this is going to be feedback that we also provide when we are able to provide a recommendation for approval for MSDE's plan as well. The joint plan that the blueprint calls for between MHEC and MSDE on meeting teacher preparation requirements, program requirements. The joint plan that was submitted is actually much more focused on the process for developing regulations and how teacher preparation regulations and how MHEC and MSDE work together to develop those regulations. So it didn't meet the full expectations and requirements of the what the joint plan should be for meeting these teacher preparation requirements and goals of teacher preparation programs that the blueprint law calls for. So we're requiring that this plan be resubmitted. And we know that with continued targeted technical assistance and support for both agencies, that the resubmitted plan that will be submitted in June 2024 with their updated implementation plan, that it will get there and it will get to what the requirements of the law are. So that is one thing that we're putting in both of these pieces of feedback for both agencies, since it's a collaboration between the two. And then just finally with the consortium, we recognize the need for really concrete focus on getting the request for proposals out to help support the creation of these community support partnerships, this hub and spoke model, and of getting grants to direct service providers now. And that has been a huge focus for them. And we see, concrete evidence of that in their implementation plan. And we know in conversations with them that they're thinking more about long-term implementation. And that is something that we wanted to see an updated timeline around. And that was part of what we asked for in their updated response was, longer term. We know that there's been some changes since the March submission. We wanted to just see that on paper with their timeline for implementation. And then we also know that there's further requests for proposal or RFPs that are going out. But we also, in their 2024 plan, want to see more narrative and explanation of how they're thinking about long-term implementation, thinking about things like technical assistance that needs to be provided, how they're going to be working with other agencies in the implementation of the blueprint, and just, again, how they see their role changing over the blueprint's implementation. So we'd like to see more narrative response around that, although we, again, really applaud the effort and the information that they provided in this submission, just in the short term of how much work they've had to do to get this community support partnership model off the ground. So I think that that's it for me, Rachel, but I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Well, it appears though we have some work ahead of us, but I think that there is something which you've outlined, which we anticipate having in the follow-up. I'm a little confused. We're going to approve the plan subject to the amendment and changes in 2024 for community support for consortium. Is that what I understand it?
So the motion is for approval, but the feedback document is being shared with we did the same with CTE committee, and now with MHEC and the consortium has very specific, and we did this with the LEAs too, has very specific feedback around expectations for the 2024 plan. So the motion is just to approve, at least that would be consistent with what we've done with other.
Well, that our partners understand the approval, which calls for a great deal of changes and revision that will come anticipated for 2024. This is a work in progress, I would say.
Yes.
All right. Are there any questions or comments or discussion about the plans that are before us today?
Member Doss?
Yes, I have a question. Does this conclude the review of the agency's implementation plans? Or do we have yet another agency? Are we done?
No, we're not done. The two that are for approval today are MHEC and the consortium. The other two remaining are the State Department of Education and the Juvenile Services Education Program. MSDE's plan, we have spent a significant amount of time with them, going over their plan and discussing, getting additional information, and then asking for some written responses. And we are waiting the final submission from MSDE with our remaining requests for additional information and responses. And then once we're able to review that and, hopefully bring it to you in January for approval. The Juvenile Services Education Program, their plan actually was submitted, wasn't due until June. Unlike the others were due in March, the Juvenile Services Education Program plan was due in June. And we are in the process of giving them our final feedback and requests for additional information and responses. And then, depending on the timing of when we receive the response and whether we have to go back and forth again, it may be hopefully the February meeting when we can bring that to you for approval. And then just as a reminder, the plans that are due in 2024 are, all of them are due in June. So we tried to not receive so many plans all at the same time that we can't, even fully staffed, we can't. Don't have the capacity to review all those things at the same time.
Got it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any further questions?
Vice Chair Kerwin? You're on mute.
Yes, I want to follow up on the chairman's comment. While we are approving the plans this year, we certainly see a number of deficiencies in them that you are sending them a message. I just, and I think I heard you say this, I think that message needs to be reinforced over the course of the coming year, so that, you know, it's not a one-time thing and we get back plans that again have the deficiencies we've cited. So I just want to encourage us to really stay after these agencies and keep and let them know that there's a, you know, a higher bar next year and greater expectations, so to speak. But I think I heard you at the very outset in your preamble say that's kind of built into the process as we go forward.
Yes, and I mean, I will say we've been fairly direct with the staff, but absolutely, as we are going to be providing ongoing targeted technical assistance throughout the year, meeting with the agency's staff regularly, so that we can continue to reinforce that and also support. You know, if there is additional resources or information that would be helpful, you know, we can bring that to bear. We cannot, we actually were thinking about, well, maybe we need strategic facilitators for some of our state partners as well. But the technical assistance grant funds that we receive currently are limited to the LEAs and the CTE committee. So that might be something we want to think about in the future, depending on how far, you know, what we get in 2024. Member Manco?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to pile on to this conversation, but you know, it's, and I understand all the challenges with, you know, like you know, the June 24 submissions being right around the corner and leadership transitions at some of the agencies. And you know, the work that has been done going back and forth with these agencies to try to, you know, get the plans into a better state. But you know, I want to go on record just saying that there's a great level of discomfort for me going through and having a recommendation to approve plans that we know have glaring deficiencies in them. And you know, I think it's you know, I think that I agree with Dr. Kerwin that just the message needs to be sent very strongly that you know, this we understand this is you know, this is the initial submission, that this is a process that we are all growing into and trying to you know, work together to meet the high expectations that we have for the agencies, for the LEAs, for the state, and for our students. But you know, I guess moving forward, it's going to be hard in future submissions to go through and approve plans that we know have glaring deficiencies, and you know, it's been and are very you know, are very out in the open. As in particular with the MHAC plan, that it seems like just the lack of ambitious thinking, the lack of stakeholder engagement, seems like they would definitely need to be remedied for future submissions.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? If not, Madam Executive Director, we can move on.
So we do need a motion to approve the Maryland Higher Education Commission plan and the Consortium on Coordinated Community Supports.
Okay. There a motion for approval, please indicate by saying it.
Are you comfortable voting on them together, or do you want to vote on them separately?
Question about it. We're voting on them together.
Okay.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
sorry. Member Doss, do you want to
No.
vote on them separately?
Yes, I'd like to vote on separately if possible.
Okay. We
Motion
have
for the-
two motions. We had two motions prepared, so that's fine.
Thank
The
you.
first motion will be on the Maryland Higher Education Commission plan. Are there a motion to that effect? I'm going to move it. There's a second to the motion.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and properly second that we approve the Maryland Higher Education Commission implementation plan. Any further discussion or comments on that motion? All right, hearing none, we will now move to either adopt or reject the motion. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposition? Hearing none?
Nay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd say nay as well.
All right, there are two in opposition. As a result, we are going to approve the motion with two in opposition. Please note those two. All right, there's a motion now for Consortium Coordinated Community Support. So moved. There's a second to the motion.
Second.
Okay, moving properly. Second, in the discussion, comments, or question related to this motion. Okay, hearing none, we'll move for approval or disapproval. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion, I'm sorry. Hearing none, the motion is approved. Okay, we have two more that we'll get in the foreseeable future, Maryland State Department of Education and Juvenile Service Educational Program as well. Thank you, Madam Executive Director. The expert.
Yep.
24.
Yep. So the next item is relates to the expert review teams that have actually already begun visiting schools. As a reminder, they'll be visiting 50 schools this year, and this is essentially sort of the pilot year for the program that did not occur last year. At the August and then again September board meetings, might have been October actually, additional information was requested and revisions to some of the parts of the reporting, deployment and training plans for the expert review teams. The AIB provided feedback to MSDE requestion. You have all of that, and I'm going to ask Rachel Amstutz, Policy Director, to just provide a really brief summary for you of where we're at. Thank you.
Okay, so my challenge in that is really brief. Developing the ERT program, as you know, was a very massive and complex undertaking, and it's been a collaborative effort to achieve both the law and the spirit of the law, to use the tool to both grow and put in the supports and to grow our schools and to provide the public and our legislature and agencies supporting our schools the information they need to understand blueprint implementation progress. So like Rachel mentioned, back in August, the AIB conditionally approved the plan. There was a lot of discussion back in August and September about specifics and topic areas, including things like the reading and math focus, the number of classroom visits, the number of ERT visits to be done in the year, the qualifications of the ERT members, the use of the ERT member expertise areas to support specific school needs, developing a feedback loop process that would maximize the ERT feedback and opportunity for the school to respond to the information given and then to grow from it. So MSDE worked very thoughtfully and thoroughly, and it took a while because we gave a lot of feedback for them to be able to develop their responses. On Friday, December 8th, we received a package with all of their responses, and we began reviewing it right away. The responses included an entire update to their original submission of the development plan, as well as all the many supporting documents like rubrics, classroom capture sheets, focus group interview questions, ERT member training calendars and topics. We are nearly finished with the review. It's a lot of documents to go through, and we are very excited to share and have shared with MSDE that all the major items that we've reviewed those and we're in good shape. We're all in agreement with where we are. We're almost able to bring closure to this process. The AIB and MSDE teams are going to continue to dig into a few of the outstanding, really complex topics. We need to define some terminology to get some consistency. It might surprise you to know that the definition of a classroom is actually a long conversation. Is it one room in a building, or is it the 6 classes that happen in one classroom in a building? And what's it look like at elementary, middle, and high? So those kinds of things just show you it's hard. We all thought we knew what a classroom was until we said, well, how do you mathematically account for that? Also, we're working to adjust some subjectivity. They've done a lot of training to help reduce and actually, let's say, increase inter-rater reliability as they're going in so that we can trust our process and trust that what we're seeing is giving us good and useful information. And then finally, we're really working to ensure that we're providing actionable and timely feedback to the schools so that they can use it. Both agencies are striving to refine this process and to arrive at a program that accomplishes its intended goals, that is fair and useful to schools, and that supports the effective implementation of the blueprint to provide every Maryland student the education they deserve. So I can't conclude my statement without telling you that MSDE, Paula Cage, has been working tirelessly on this. Their responsiveness to the feedback that we gave them, number one, they made life very easy for us. It's a lot of information, and they organized it in such a way, gave me page numbers, look here, see this here, this is adapted here. And in our work together, we have to push and pull. We give them a feedback and say, could you do this? And they're like, we wish we could, but it's really, really hard. So the process between the two agencies it's taking a lot of time because it's a very complex place. But after the submission last Friday, I think we're very, very close to saying that it is fully approved, and the work will continue because we're in a pilot year and it's an iterative process. So I said a lot and I said it really fast. Are there any questions I can answer about ERT?
Just the time frame again for how we're rolling this out and the number. I know the number that we have overall. So what do we mean when we started already? What's the number? And
the number of schools that we've been at? They have completed 7 officially so far. And their original plan ramped up a few in the fall, more in the winter. And I think, Rachel, they're planning on being done by March, end of March. They bumped up some of the timeline when the number went to 50 instead of 200.
Okay.
I think the goal is to finish all the visits before the assessment window opens, and it just gets a little harder to get into the schools. But I think they also built some time in where weather and things might shift, and they might not be able to do the visits when they plan to do them.
I'm sorry.
All 50 schools to be visited this school year.
I got a little bit confused from the original number, which I had a pretty good indication of the diversity and location geographically around the state. I got a little confused as we went down to the 50 plus the other reviews we have of the actual schools, numbers, location, that kind of thing. Could you just speak to the
I can give you one piece so far of the 7 done. It goes Baltimore County, Wacomico, Carroll, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Prince George's. So those are done. Rachel, of the other 50, we have a document that shows those. Do you remember any specifics about that?
I do not off the
Yeah.
top of my head, but we have the
I-
whole.
to us and show what the geographical and diversity is around the state? That's all. I just need a little bit of comment about that.
The one piece I can say is that we worked with them around
Yeah.
their method of selecting schools, and it in the end, and I think Dr. Stapleton, you might remember some of the math of this. There were 6 categories of how they chose their schools, and in some of those we can't control the demographic or the county that it's going to come out of. Like, it just is a mathematical selection. But by the time we get to the 6th box, where it's a random selection, if counties had already been visited, they came out of the random pool, and the pool was reduced to try to increase the counties, so that any county that hadn't been visited was visited. Does that sound right, Dr. Stapleton and Rachel? Okay.
All right. Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Thank you, Rachel.
Okay, so that was actually just an information item, so there's no approval on that at this point. The board did approve the deployment plan for the 50 schools in October. And we can certainly share that list with all of you again, just to be responsive to your questions, Mr. Chair.
Right.
I think they even have, and if they don't, they had originally, MSD had done a map of the state to show where the schools were. So if that's not updated, we could ask them to update that for the 50 schools. I think that would be helpful.
Thank you.
Mr. Manco has a question.
Yeah, this question is just out of curiosity, but the portion of the expert review team visits that are now targeted towards literacy, we have a sense of how many schools they will be getting into, and then that all figures into the count of how many we need to visit in order to get on track and then eventually meet the requirements in 2032 of getting into the set
Every
number.
school.
Yeah.
All of the schools. Yeah. So we actually worked on that. And so we've got the 50 schools that MSDE is visiting through the expert review teams. And then of the remaining, so what the statute calls for is that 10% of all public schools should be visited each year over 10 years, which allows us to get to all of them by 2032. And that 10% requirement starts this current year. So there are 1,400 roughly public schools in the state. And there are, as it turns out, about 900 elementary schools. And so the 50 schools statewide plus 10% of elementary schools actually gets us right to that overall 10% mark. So it would be 50 plus the 90 elementary schools that the literacy expert teams will be visiting across the 24 LEAs. And that it worked out this way, but it was a very nice way that it worked out, that it's 10% of all 1,400 schools, and then the combination of the 50 schools, plus we've asked the literacy teams to visit 10% of elementary schools in each district, will get us to overall meet the statutes calling for 10% of all schools to be visited.
That's great. That's good to hear. Thank you.
Are there any other questions on expert review teams?
Thank you. All right, let's go.
The next item is the 2024 LEA Blueprint Implementation Plan Development Guide. You all received a copy of the draft. No longer called a template, now a guide. And of course, this is what the superintendents were referring to at the beginning of the meeting. And and so I was going to provide some information, and then Emma, we have a few slides just to high level to share the changes to the guide since last year's template. But I just wanted to overall say that we really, AIB staff and MSTE staff have spent a lot of time collaborating and thinking about sort of what went well last year in last year's plan and process, what didn't go as well, and how to improve the process and how to improve the plans and the planning for blueprint implementation. And so the guide that you have is really designed to support and really provoke strategic thinking, systemic thinking by the school systems around blueprint implementation and really how to do things differently where needed to improve our education system and especially our outcomes for students. And so that was sort of that was our frame as we were going through the process of what this guide should look like. And the guide is sort of, there's a cover memo and then there's a guide. And then within the guide, there are a series of questions that LEAs will need to respond to. And there are a total of 24 that they will need to respond to between the March 15th and the May 1st submission dates. And so one of the big changes that, aside from the number of questions, another big change is the timeline. And so I referenced this earlier, but we really wanted to give the strategic facilitators and the LEAs more time to work together before asking them to submit their plans. And we really wanted the LEAs to sort of take a deep breath and feel like they had the time to do the systemic and strategic thinking, particularly around how the different pieces of a blueprint work together, before diving into writing their more detailed plans for this year. And so that is why we are proposing the two submission dates of March 15th for the first question, which is a strategic planning question around and also really identifying what the biggest barriers to blueprint implementation are, not like at a very detailed level, but more at a systemic level, at a system level. What are the barriers and how are they thinking about that, and how are they resolving it? And of course, as part of the guide, there's also a series of other submissions that LEAs will need to make. I believe it's on page 5. And we included this, and as we thought about the process and the timeline, we were very intentional about separating having different submissions so that everything wasn't going into this one plan that is submitted one time a year and then sort of, maybe put on a shelf or, And so we really wanted to focus on sort of the ongoing work and the continuous improvement, and also sort of stagger the work because it's a lot of work that we're asking the LEAs to do, and it's vital, and we need them to do it, thoughtfully and intentionally. And so we have different deadlines for, I mentioned earlier, the draft early literacy plan is due in January. The final plans are due in June. There are different dates for the comprehensive math plans as well. And in fact, Emma, would you be able to share your screen with that list? I'd actually love to show it. Or
You mean the list on page 5?
yeah.
Yes, hold on one second, I'm sorry.
That's fine. I'm sorry. I would share my screen, but I
Nope, I got it.
was very challenged by it earlier.
Yep, no worries. And I'll zoom in a little bit.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's it. That's perfect. Thank you. So you can see there's a number of different deadlines that we have here. And so the draft math, yes.
I'm so sorry. You know what? I think that this is an older version because
I
I'm just
think
not
so
seeing the
too.
hyperlinks that I should see here, and I just pulled it off of the download. So I'm sorry. Let me get the correct one.
Yeah, I think the only difference is we actually have a date for the pre-K waiver that says TBD there. But anyway, the point is that the plan is not the only thing that LEAs are expected to be doing or will need to submit, and it's all part of sort of the ongoing work. And as we've been thinking about these plans and sort of the annual process, we want to make sure that it's not like a compliance exercise, that it's actually I mean, there's an element of that because we need to know what they're doing, and then as
Are
we
they-
have.
They're getting assistance with all of that?
I'm sorry.
Are they getting technical assistance with that as well?
Yes, they are, and thank you for that. As we are working more and more collaboratively with our partners at MSDE and the State Board of Education, we're planning to provide additional guidance that really starts to hopefully provide more guidance and technical assistance around different pieces of blueprint implementation to support the work as they're developing their plans and as they're implementing their plans. We're aiming for some of that additional guidance to be available beginning in early February. And so we're scheduling weekly technical assistance sessions for the LEAs. We're starting next week, and then we'll start back up in January. And there will be a combination of drop-in times as well as targeted topics to discuss at different sessions, such as, ways to reach out to providers and really, really specific things to offer to private providers to encourage them to participate in the full day pre-K program, as we were talking about earlier, partnering with different teacher preparation and alternative providers of certification to be helpful to support growing the high quality staff. So that's just one example of the kind of more targeted technical assistance that we're going to be supporting over, ongoing. And then as well as the outcome measures work group is hard at work to set targets for progress monitoring. And we are, as we're now starting to receive data and be able to analyze that data and start to set targets that we can then share with the LEAs. And we've discussed that the LEAs aren't going to be setting their own targets, but there will be a statewide target, and then the LEAs will need to get into a range that the outcome measures work will be proposing. This is all going to come to the AIB. But as of now, we don't have those targets, so we're doing that work. And while we're doing that work, I think the data that we're going to be asking the LEAs to look at in their plans is going to help inform their sort of a reflective process of like what is working and what is not working and what to do differently. The one piece of this guide that is not complete yet is what we're calling the data appendix. So one of the pieces of feedback from the LEAs was that the data questions and the data tables that they were asked to submit in last year's submit in the 23 submit this year's submissions were inconsistent. It wasn't clear what data they were really supposed to be providing, and in many cases the data had already been submitted to MSDE. And so we want to avoid that again. So the data appendix is going to actually include the data, if MSDE has it, that we're asking the LEAs to review and analyze, and then explain what the data is telling them and us about progress and how they're going to address that. Yes.
Yeah, I have the data target work group. That is an enormously, I have enormous respect for them because that's a really challenging work. But of course, it's essential. Is there any? I don't recall. Maybe maybe we have an update. What's the timeline for getting this done? And this is not a nudge. It's because I know how hard this is. I'm just curious what the work group is thinking about a timeline.
And as chair, I'm going to punt this over to Emma, who knew I was going to punt this over to Emma.
Thank you. Rachel, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, Emma, I'll of course let you answer, but I would just say as soon as possible is the short answer. I think again, as we're working more closely with our partners at MSDE and the Longitudinal Data System Center, and data is beginning to become available. That has been one of our hurdles. We're going to be able to make more progress quickly. But I'd say we're not quite there yet in terms of the data that we have and the ability to start to actually analyze the data and set targets.
But you say as soon as possible, are we thinking 2 months, 6 months? What can you put any?
I think for everything to be completed, we also know that there are some measures that we need to, and we've talked about this previously, identify and create instruments to actually measure. So when we're thinking about public opinion around the blueprint, for instance, that's going to require some instrument to be created. So in some cases, it could truly be year plus because we would need data and be able to collect that. But in terms of the initial target setting for data that we have for particular measures, optimistic about within the next month or two, I'm going to say two, that we could get some initial targets set for some of those. But we also recently we've had some successes, like Rachel was saying, with receiving data, and we have a target setting framework that we talked about in the last outcome measures work group meeting. We've also then identified criteria for what we need to see in the data to be able to set targets. And so it's just an iterative process of, we see something, we need to get more information about it. And it takes time. So I'm hopeful within the next couple of months for initial targets.
Great. Thank you.
We'll see. But thank you.
Emma, I might have covered everything on the slides, but
I know, I was going to say that I think we actually did cover everything. Would you like me to show them instead or no?
well, let's see what would you like to do? We also, I was wondering if we might want to show like the first question that, which is the one that's due March 15th and just talk a little more about that.
Go ahead
Are
and do
there
that.
any other questions? Okay.
And I actually did pull up the correct version now, so I'll show the first.
You don't want to know how many versions there have been, let me just say.
Yeah. Oh boy. Okay. Can you all see my screen with the system-wide blueprint implementation prompt? Great.
Yes, we can. If you could make it just a little bit bigger, if that is possible.
Yeah. Yes, I'll cut off part of it, but I can scroll. So just let me know when I should. So
this is the first, it's not really a question, but it's the first item. And you can see the title is System-Wide Blueprint Implementation. And this is what it will be due on March 15th. And as we're saying here, to reach the blueprints goal, our ultimate goal of preparing all students for success and in our globally competitive world. Maryland schools must transform by rethinking and redesigning existing policy and practices to create a system that equitably serves all students and prepares them for success. This is your opportunity to share how your district has been approaching this change and its plans for the future. And so this response, they will have up to 10 pages to respond to this. And we've provided a series of elements that need to be included in their response, including, and I think Dr. Bedell referred to this, how your district's vision, goals, strategic plan, and any other system and school level plans are aligned to the blueprint. And how you're considering connections across the blueprint pillars and how the expected outcomes of the blueprint intersect with and align with district programming. And then the second element is how the district is communicating with the blueprint implementers in the district, which includes principals and educators, as well as other staff, soliciting feedback and adapting their communication strategies to improve understanding of the blueprint's purpose. And this is something that we are, we have, as we've all been around the state in various capacities, we know that there are a lot of principals and teachers that don't really know about the blueprint and don't understand why we're implementing the blueprint and it's just lack of knowledge. And of course that's part of our work, and we're going to be talking about that next with our communications consultant, but and how we can support the districts in this work. But ultimately, we know that the school is sort of the hub of where parents and teachers and students receive information and go for information. And so clearly the districts and the schools are key actors in that. The next element is around systemic change to support ongoing blueprint implementation. Consider the strategies that have and have not been successful in your current approach. Also, we've asked them what their 3 greatest challenges are with blueprint implementation and what they're doing to address them, and how the district will, do things differently to implement these strategies effectively. And then also how they're monitoring progress, particularly towards around their 3 greatest challenges. I think that is all of them. Can you scroll down a little bit, Emma? So those are the specific elements that we have asked them to include in their response. And then you can see the criteria for success. So each item has a criteria for success. And last year's template, I keep saying last year, in the 2023 template, the criteria for success were in a completely separate document. This, the guide includes the question and then the criteria for success that will be used to evaluate the response for each question in this document. That's another change that we made as a response to feedback from the LEAs, as well as I've mentioned that this is the guide is a series of items or questions for the LEAs to respond to, but the format that response takes, it's not like a fillable form the way it was last year, which presented a lot of just technical challenges. The LEAs are able to write their plan however they want within we have some specific like formatting requirements. You can't have an itty bitty font, for example. But otherwise, the LEAs are able to submit their plans in whatever format they want to use. I see a couple of hands, and I do not know whose hand was up first. Member Lynch? I think I read the signal right there.
But I just wanted to commend the work of your team in revising this and in listening to the feedback that we heard. We heard the impact of that from the superintendents in their public comments at the top of this meeting. But also reviewing it, what I personally really appreciate about this new format is that it triggers a few things. It triggers really deep thinking about what is and isn't working, which I think as we continue to move forward with the blueprint, we have to think about the way we're innovating and not just trying to do old things and new things, but to really get to the root cause of what is and isn't working in student achievement and student success, and doing more of the things that are and sunsetting things that are not. And then I also love that it isn't a fillable format, because I think what ultimately the charge should be is to figure out the innovative practices that are making a difference. And so if we are subjected to drop down menus and sort of prescribed elements, then we really do hinder exactly what we are trying to foster. So I want to thank your team for their work in doing it. And I think it will pose additional challenge as we review the plans, because they will likely be incredibly unique. And so developing a way to effectively evaluate them, but that's a good problem to have. And I'm eager to do that work.
Thank you.
Member
Thank
Robin?
Hi everyone. So I definitely agree with everything that Member Lynch said, and I also kind of wanted to say I do appreciate the submission dates on the previous page, and how everything's spread out, and kind of like what Member Lynch was saying, it might I guess more of a little challenging. I've had to look at different reports throughout the year as opposed to one time, but it is a good problem to have because it gives us a chance to really delve deeper into each of them. Are you able to scroll up a little bit, Emma, to the previous page with the dates on it? Thank you. I had one question about that page. Here we go with the announcements. Every time.
We've had this problem before with Member Robinson. He is a teacher and he was in the school, and they are making the end of school day announcements over the PA
I
system.
think it's a nice reminder of why we're all here.
And I was like, I was hoping it was going to be away because it's dismissal started at 2:25, so everyone should be home, but they're still calling buses because we have in case you didn't know, we have a crisis of having enough bus drivers, so students are in the building 35 minutes after they should be. But anyways, so I was looking at the part about the career ladder, and my question, I remember why we separated them out from the initial submission to give districts more time to work with their labor partners on them. My question was around the difference between July 1, 2024 and July 1, 2025, and specifically the wording "and for if applicable." Can you talk to that area a little bit more?
Sure. So as a reminder, the levels of the career ladder are level 1 is essentially all certified teachers. Level 2 are teachers who are pursuing national board certification or a master's degree. And level 3 is national board certified teachers or teachers with a master's degree if in a field that doesn't have a national board certification area. Level 4 is the beginning of the sort of the teacher. There's two pieces of it, the teacher leadership and the school leadership. And for teacher leadership, it's the the beginning of lead teacher, distinguished teacher, and professor distinguished teacher. And in order to move to level 4, you have to be on level 3 first. So you have to be national board certified or a master's degree if there isn't a national board area. And so part of the phasing of the career ladder approach is that for many of the districts, the main challenge right now is getting more national board certified teachers. So the focus is really on moving teachers from level 1 to level 2 to level 3. There are only a handful of districts that have enough national board certified teachers currently to be able to support level 4 of the career ladder. And so what the guidance on the career ladder said, if you are going to be putting teachers into level 4 in the next school year, you must include that in your submission on July 1 of 2024. But if you aren't quite there yet, you can submit that in July 1, 2025, which as part of what would also include the professional development plan, the PAR plan, and all the things that go along with level 4. So it's certainly your district. You shared some great information at the career ladder convening last month. You all are doing some really great thinking on level 4, and it certainly can be included in the July 1 submission, but it doesn't have to be unless there are going to be teachers on level 4 of the career ladder in the upcoming school year. It's a very long answer.
Yeah, no, that's what I wanted to just clarify for the record for everyone. Thank you.
Okay.
Is there a number we have of people from last year to this year in the national board certified or the seeking national board certified? Is there a number that we could point to go to at this point?
So, I'm gonna ask either Emma or Rachel to look up that data because we do have it for last year. And actually very recently, just on Saturday, the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards announced or released the I guess their scores for national board certification for teachers who were either seeking new certification or maintaining certification. Unfortunately, that the data for how many of those teachers are from Maryland is not available yet. And we were actually on a call with the national board a little earlier today and learned that that data will be available in January. So we
Okay.
don't have that data right now. But in terms of, but we'll have that in January. In terms of the number of teachers who are pursuing, Emma, you put it in
I
the,
put it in the chat and I can quickly just share.
That would
So this
be-
is this is based off of data of teachers participating in the National Board Incentive Program and shows a significant increase in teachers who are participating in that program between the 2021-22 and 22-23 academic years. Those are the years that we have data for right now. In 21-22, 711 initial candidates for NBC participated in the incentive program. And then in the 2022-23 year, 2,372 initial candidates were reported. So that reflects over a 230% increase in the participation in the incentive program for NBC.
Can we attribute that to the new emphasis following the blueprint?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is some of the data that we were waiting for to be able to include in the annual report. But this is absolutely, I think, attributable to the additional salary incentives, and hopefully other working conditions that the blueprint includes for to support national board certification. And I will say that when we were on the phone with the national board earlier today, they did say that we would be very, very happy with the data when we are able to receive it in
Well,
January.
Thank you.
I also just want to say, give a shout out to while we don't know how many of them there are yet, it sounds like there are a lot, and we really want to congratulate all of our teachers who achieved national board certification or maintained their national board certification. We know it's quite an accomplishment, and it's key to the blueprint. It's a key element of the blueprint. And so we really just want to encourage and support you. And for all these teachers who are now pursuing national board, encourage you to keep going.
Yeah, in addition to that, Rachel, we should also get information reference to those who are receiving additional certificates, additional degrees as well, and make a comparison if we can, as much information as we can that will reflect the changes that have been made based on the impetus from the blueprint.
Yeah.
Any certifications, any additional degrees. I know they've been doing it in the past, as well as national board, and compare that data with the prior blueprint information.
Yeah, that's actually at least related to the national board. It's the next phase of the work is actually to identify the areas that do not have national board certification, and identify the master's degrees and other certifications that would be considered in lieu of national board certification.
No,
So
but as though it shows in addition to national board, which we clearly have made a connection, the relevancy of that. But I think we also benefit to the degree that there are people who are doing additional things as well, which goes to the enhancement of our entire teacher corps. And it also reflects to some degree the emphasis that is placed on the career ladder when you see those connections between additional training, additional certification, additional educational achievement that reflects all of those things in the blueprint. That's the point I'm trying to see whether or not connection to it.
I see Mr. Manko's hand is up.
Yeah, I just didn't want to lose this point because, you know, I think this is a real game changer for our state when you look at these numbers of teachers that are going through the board certification process. And, you know, I can attest to it myself as I, you know, went through the process. I think Justin would say the same thing. It's, you know, it's some of the best professional development I ever received. And I would hear that from, you know, multiple of my teachers that went through the process as well. And, you know, I think the more teachers that we even have engaging in the process and going through the reflective practice that's required in order to go through and submit the portfolio, reflect on your on student performance, reflect on what you're doing and bringing to the school. You know, I think all of that is hugely beneficial for the state. And, you know, I'm hoping that this will continue and we will, you know, as time goes on, continue to see, you know, huge dividend for our students as our teachers continue to grow and have exposure to more professional development through the national board process.
Member Robinson?
The data that was just shared about the incentive program for pursuing national board, just anecdotally, I also understand that a lot of people have been paying out of pocket too, because of, you know, everything that's coming forward. So I think that's great. I do just kind of want to say out, you know, for the record also that like as we're looking at the, I'm about to say implementation plan, the guide submissions for or the submissions for in the upcoming year in the section on national board certification, I think it might be important to pay attention to how LEAs are treating the program and like how they're administering it. One of the challenges has been that, you know, different districts use different deadlines. And so like some districts might say, well, the deadline is, you know, earlier than the state is actually, you know, requiring the deadline to be, versus others. And I think we should kind of pay attention to that aspect as well of like, our districts doing everything that they can to make sure that the timelines open as possible. I know we've already had the conversation about, you know, administrators and, you know, what the definition of a teacher is and who's, you know, able to qualify. But I do think that, just speaking from experience, I do think there are some differences in how different LEAs are administering, you know, doing their role in the incentive program that has impacted whether or not people are able to do it. And it's caused some people to consider paying for out of pocket. So I think we should be mindful.
That's a great flag to have, and we can certainly, yeah, we will definitely follow up on that.
Awesome.
And we also have a national board certified teacher on staff. We've gone a little off off our guide topic, but since we're on it, Rachel Amstutz is also a national board certified teacher. And I think she just wanted to say something about the teachers who maybe aren't national board certified yet, but are in the process.
Thank you. And I'm very sorry to interrupt or prolong the meeting, but I wanted to speak directly to a group of people from Saturday who got scores. And it was an exciting day. And some of the national board certified people it's a big community day around the country of recognizing achievement and progress. But some people get sad news that day. They don't get the fireworks on their screen, literally. They don't. They get, you didn't quite make it yet. And it's heartbreaking to get that. But there's also, we know if you've been through it, it's a really rigorous process and most people don't pass on the first time. Maryland has a much higher rate because we support our teachers going through it pretty well. but a lot of people out there also didn't get great news on Saturday. And I just really wanted to be able to say that if you're in the middle of the process, if you submitted a component or two, or if you got news that you didn't love last week, all you have to do is go back to it. And just like we tell our kids, you're not there yet, but that commitment to the profession, that commitment to professional growth is really admirable, and don't give up. It's really hard to achieve national boards. It's not the hardest thing ever, but it's work, and it's intentional work, and you can do it and you will do it, and you're doing a really demanding job on top of this extra certification and achievement that you're trying to do. So give yourself some slack and keep going at it. And if you haven't registered yet, the process will open in the spring to be signing up for national boards, and all 24 of our districts have implemented support programs and structures to say, we recognize it's a lot of work and we want to help support you through it. So keep going and don't give up. If you didn't see fireworks yet, your day can be coming around the corner next year.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. You can tell she's a former principal and teacher too. All the good things. Okay, so to take us back to the development guide, we looked at that one question. Were there any other specific questions or anything else you want to discuss? Otherwise, we have a motion, a draft motion for approval of the guide, and the specific pieces that you are required to approve or not approve is the timeline, the change in the timeline from just March 15th to March 15th and May 1st, as well as the criteria for success.
Okay, we're going to move that motion. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, it's moved and properly seconded that we approve the the new dates and submission guide criteria. Is there any question related to the motion? Hear none? Ready for the motion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposition? Hearing none, the motion to approve. I think our last item there, I think before we go into closed session.
Yes, so if we can bring our, actually, I can do it. Okay. So the next item is we talked about this at last month's meeting. We wanted to bring the communications team to talk with you about the communications plan and that they've developed for AIB, and some of the work that the focus of it and some of the work that is underway right now. And so I think Catherine might turn it. I just want to ask, because Diane was here at the very beginning, but I don't see her now. So I don't know if
that's okay.
Okay.
Rachel, I don't see her either. I'm happy to say, by way of introduction to myself, that there she is. Diane Devaney, who's joining audio, is the prime contractor. Rachel, I don't see her either. I'm happy to say, by way of introduction to myself, that there she is. Diane Devaney, who's joining audio, is the prime contractor. Rachel, I don't see her either. I'm happy to say, by way of introduction to myself, that there she is. Diane Devaney, who's joining audio, is the prime contractor. Rachel, I don't see her either. I'm happy to say, by way of
what is going on?
Here she is. Diane Devaney.
Communications issue.
Rachel, I don't see her either. I'm happy to say, by way of
What is on?
Here she is.
Okay, I'm
Communication.
gonna ask Diane and Catherine. Oh wait, did it stop?
Yeah, that was
Ooh.
strange.
Okay, that's a new one.
Yeah.
An actual worst nightmare for me. So I apologize. I can only imagine what that was like for the rest of you.
Hey,
Yeah,
Rachel, we
That
have
was strange.
I'm so
Okay,
sorry.
that's a new one.
This is Heidi. We had this problem this
You're
morning.
So
If
I
anybody on the IAC call,
Yep.
if anybody has YouTube up, and
Oh,
you're playing it, you need to close your YouTube windows. Please close your YouTube
Oh,
windows.
thank you, Heidi. That
Mhm.
makes sense. I've just never seen it loop like, yeah, okay. Because I know you guys were watching it on YouTube before you joined the Zoom. So,
Yeah.
okay, let's try this again. So we have our communications consulting team here to discuss the plan that they've developed for AIB and the work that is underway. I will turn it over to Diane Devaney to introduce the team and take it away.
That was quite the introduction. Sorry about that. We're honored to be the prime contractor in conjunction with Collaborative Communications, working with the AIB team, who is amazing. Even just listening to this board meeting, you guys are just, I'm honored that you guys are part of the execution of the blueprint in our state. So I'm Diane Devaney. My team hands up project management and the social media. And then let me introduce the collaborative team, which is led by Catherine Hunt. And then we also have Mara Kearney on the with us. And then David Hoff is our PR specialist on this and works with the media and everything. So Mara has put together a presentation that goes over the plan that we've created so far and what we're executing. So we are ready to go.
Thanks, Diane. And hi, all. While my colleague Maura pulls that up, I'm Catherine Hunt at Collaborative Communications. We're communications experts with an exclusive focus on supporting efforts related to education and learning and bring a lot of experience supporting statewide systems transformation work. So we've been humbled by this opportunity to help think for AIB and the blueprint through your communications efforts. So thank you for letting us be here and to share our expertise. We're going to walk through this strategy, and I'm going to start by grounding us in some of the goals. We developed this in the early fall, and it has informed our ongoing work with Rachel Hayes and the full team. And as you, I hope, can see on your screen, hearing me only once, our work is really grounded in building public support for the blueprint among key audiences, those across the state broadly, and also specifically in communities where the work is happening. And actual blueprint implementation is starting to change schools and experiences for teachers and families. In that, we really want everyone to understand why the blueprint is a worthwhile endeavor and what it will mean for those of us who live here in Maryland, especially those closest to schools. Secondly, we're also focusing our work in communications around sharing successes from the blueprint. So that's both ongoing planning efforts and commitments like those approved here today, as well as related to bright spots and progress through implementation work of the plans and the collaborative efforts that are happening among LEAs and other partners and folks across the state. And then finally, we're oriented around this goal to activate key champions and influencers as messengers and advocates for the blueprint. We know that people absorb information and demonstrate support when it comes from sources that they know and trust. So that's a key element of what it is that we're trying to do. So moving on here on this second slide, how did we land on these goals and how do we devise the communications plan that we're also going to walk through with you today? We immersed ourselves in the work of the Kirwan Commission and then took to engaging directly with key folks on the ground, blueprint audiences from across the state, to better understand the communications needs and opportunities. We also presented and probed for feedback about those opportunities among an array of groups, including the Blueprint Coalition, several coordinator meetings, as well as meetings with other statewide associations and affiliated entities. My colleague Maura is now going to share with you what we learned from those engagements, and then we'll lay out the planks of our communications plan and get into some discussion with you.
Great. Thanks, Catherine. So we heard a lot of great feedback and perspectives during these interviews that probably over the course, talked to via meetings and what have you, 100 to 150 folks. And so these are just some of the big buckets of things that we heard. One, really that, teachers and principals being key audiences. Lots and lots of folks were mentioned as potential audiences, but people really honing in on folks in the school building being really critical to understanding all the components and the value of the blueprint. We also heard that as we're having communications, things really need to be tailored to audiences. What a teacher hears needs to be different than what a parent hears, and so on and so on. So really thinking about how we can be tailoring information. And then, as Catherine mentioned, these partners and messengers, that the AIB cannot and should not be the messenger to every single audience all the time. That teachers are going to hear things from principals, that parents are going to hear things from their classroom teacher, and so on. So really tapping these messengers and blueprint coordinators and coalitions and all these great folks who are in the work and making sure that we're leveraging their role and the networks and the way that they're communicating with folks. And that this needs to be happening on an ongoing, consistent basis. It can't be something every quarter that something comes out. So engaging in frequent communications like social media, and then things that can be a little bit more long-term in terms of new materials, but really just keeping that drumbeat of information at the ready. And I will say I'm going to go through these and then we'll certainly have time for questions. So based on what we heard and with our communications expertise, this is the strategy that we've been employing. So one is that working with AIB, we've been prioritizing our communications efforts to these folks in the schools, your teachers and principals, superintendents. That's where we're starting our communications approach. And in that, we're creating this clear and concise information tailored to these folks. When relevant, we're pitching to media. We're certainly responding to media inquiries and getting information out there more broadly as well. And that's sort of where we're keeping the AIB communications focus that we're working with. And then, as I mentioned, we're taking these materials and partnering with key messengers. So they're infusing this information and materials into their existing channels, their emails, their newsletters, their social, the meetings they're presenting at. And then this part, which is really important and a place we've been spending a lot of time, is letting these folks share feedback and ask questions on the messages that we're creating, on the materials that we're doing, so that they feel ownership and bought into these materials, and then are more likely to use them once they've been able to give their, really great feedback that we're hearing, really helpful information, but making sure it's sort of a two-way street in this. So we've been really spending some time since we started working with you all in the summer, creating these relationships with folks, getting a trust with them that the feedback that they share is going to be considered and used when appropriate on this, so that they're more likely to continue to share it and answer our calls when we're looking for support. And then similarly, we're hoping these all folks, as they're sharing it with teachers and principals, will also be getting feedback and sharing that with us, so we can be improving and adding on to these materials as we go. So just to highlight some of the tactics too, as I mentioned, these suite of materials that we're working on, taking large amounts of information, you all have seen the blueprint, and it's very complex. And so trying to organize them into some topic areas and chunks that can be sort of pushed out and more digestible materials, making them visually appealing with consistent, concise language. And then when possible, and when we're appropriate, creating templates that principals or teachers or others can use to tailor what's going on in their school or in their community. Some things are evergreen and true for all of them, and some things, as you know, look different in different communities. So giving them a template where they can show that. So I just want to give you a quick snapshot of some of the things that we're working on. This is a PowerPoint that we're working on teachers. This one is in sort of its final stages and goes through all of the things that teachers should know about the blueprint. And we got some great feedback from blueprint coordinators that we're working on now, and even some principals as well. So incorporating that feedback, and we'll be pushing that out shortly. We've also got one in the works for principals that has similar information that's going to teachers. But what does that mean to a principal? How should they be, and what questions might they be asking to teachers? Because we know that principals are one of the best messengers to reach teachers, but if they don't feel equipped and given the proper messages and materials to have those conversations, it seems like sometimes those conversations aren't happening. So want to make sure that they have the resources they need and the support and communications materials to do that. And then again, just trying to break things down. So in this deck here, you could click on those top tabs and go to those different sections. So you can decide which information is most interesting to you, and then go into that. So really trying to find ways to organize the information and make it easy for people to go to where they want to know the information at that point in time. And then using visuals, we all learn differently. A lot of copy on a page can be a lot. So we're really spending the time to make sure what people are getting is visual and as concise as possible. As I mentioned, we're also using social media. So these are materials that we're pushing out on AIB site, and then we're also as well sharing examples of social media with our messengers to get them to put those in their channels as well. And we anticipate ramping up that effort as well. And these are just a snapshot of some of the folks that I'm in kind of weekly communications with at this point, or at least monthly, with different folks of sharing information that we have, getting their feedback, seeing, if what they have is useful, or do they need an email blurb to get it out, and just really making sure that they're getting things in a way that they can get them out to their audiences. This is not an exhaustive list, and certainly happy to keep adding to our messengers, because that is a real primary strategy of how we see ourselves getting this message out to the wide variety of audiences in the state. And then also media. That's, certainly getting to the masses, is that media engagement is great. So we're putting out a regular cadence of press releases following meetings like this, whether there needs to be a public statement. We've also got calls on the book to start working with, and I know AIB has already been, but getting collaborative involved in working with Dr. Casey Wright on public pieces, and more, and the state board on more communications opportunities in a partnership public space that we can do. And these are just some of the examples of media coverage that we've been seeing in a positive light, and hoping to see more and more of that, getting these success stories out there and real examples of the blueprint in action. And then some of the metrics, as you'd expect to see, a number of placements, where social media followings, are we getting inquiries from folks? Are people using our materials? How many success stories are we able to gather? So capturing these things so we can track our success. And then here's some of the things that are coming down the pike. As I showed you the deck for teachers and principals, also these templates. And then we're going to be doing some, those ones have been more Blueprint 101. And then we're going to do some deep dives into specific issues, whether it's funding, literacy, college and career ready, to complement sort of the overarching messages on there. And then continuing with our ongoing social, both for AIB and our partner organizations. So now that was a lot. So thank you for your time, and we'd love to answer any questions that you might have. And I'm going to stop my share so I can see everybody again.
What kind of feedback have you received from the teachers, which I consider to be the most important links in this, in helping us implement this plan?
Yeah. I think some of what we've been hearing is that our first round, when we first put together some key messages, people felt that they were too high level, and people really want some of this nitty gritty. And so really giving the specifics around, what are the teacher salaries? When will they be rolling out? What timing is this? So into, as and so it's sort of this balancing of giving, sort of the overarching information, and then the level of granularity that impacts them and their role and what they should be knowing. Certainly there's been some questions around the NBC, which I'm sure you all have heard. And so just really in this, what does this really mean for me in my role? And what do I need to be taking away from this? And so that's why we've been tailoring the messages specifically to those audiences, so that we can be really targeted in what we're communicating to folks.
Do we need validators or people working between the various entities to help spread that message? And because I see differences between principals and supervisors, board members, and teachers, so that they're all on the same page to some degree.
Yeah, totally agree. And yeah, we've got a couple of quotes in the deck that we're working on, and that's definitely something we see ourselves using social for, and tapping into, teachers are very active on Facebook. And so looking to tap into teachers who have a big social following, because we know if they're sharing it with their peers, then that will go a long way. So for sure, yeah, we're in the process and working with Blueprint coordinators and others to identify some of these teachers who, are willing to be key messengers and give quotes on that, but welcome all this, because yeah, the more peer-to-peer messengers we have, the more successful we're going to be in our communications efforts, for sure.
The reason I asked about the follow-up, because I talked to a couple of teachers, and they all welcome the blueprint, its goals, its objectives. A little bit concerned about the details naturally. And when at least some of them responded and are talking about it, their response was, is this too much for us at this point in time, following all the challenges we had coming out of the pandemic? Are we overloaded? Do we need to just sort of stop and catch our breath and then move forward? And my response had always been that it's too important for us to stop because of the impact of the kids. And I'm not sure there would ever be a right time to do this, but I did, and I've heard that from some teachers coming out of the pandemic, all the emotional, psychological challenges we had, the amount of work, and now we're being asked to embrace a very aggressive initiative that would be aggressive and hard, even in the best of circumstances. Any kind of feedback or comments that may share with any of those comments that I've just made?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, when we were doing the key informant interviews, that was sort of a familiar, this is a lot, this is ambitious and this is going to be an uphill battle. But to your point, everyone's in favor of what the outcome could be and a little bit apprehensive around the doing of it. But I haven't heard anybody completely resistant, but it just sort of acknowledging this is, it's a lot and ongoing there. And I think depending on your role, I mean, in some ways, there's different things that people are going to be required to do, but some for the teachers really getting more support to do those things and more, salary and training and time in their day on this. So it's trying to emphasize, sort of what's built in to make those things possible versus just, here's what we're trying to do.
I'd like to get Member Robinson's reaction to that point. Maybe he can enlighten us a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. When I was looking through the presentation, I think teachers are definitely an important constituency to consider. I think when I talk to my colleagues about it, like you just said, Chair Leggett, like there's a lot of like people are in favor of the ideas behind it. What I encounter most often is I guess disbelief that it'll actually materialize in terms of like, do we as a state, as a government, are we going to like actually persevere through all the challenges and make sure that everything comes to fruition? So there's some disbelief there. I do think that there's also a feeling of being overwhelmed by the things that we already do. And so the idea of like doing national boards sometimes feels like extra. I do say what Member Manko said earlier is I say it's the best professional development I've ever done. So I do kind of, tout that. But I think in general, teachers, a lot of them feel that they've demonstrated their capacity already through various degree programs and through their current state certificate. And I think a lot of times it's feeling like it's something extra to do, as opposed to an opportunity to grow your practice. So I think that's like the biggest issue that I've seen and kind of like how I counter them, but I'm only one person.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Jennifer. Are there any in this portion? Yes, go ahead, Floyd.
I see Laura's hand raised. I'm just seeing some of my notes up here.
Let me make sure that Jennifer, you had your hand up earlier. Are you?
No, go ahead. And then if I still have something, I'll go after you.
Okay, so this is a different topic, if it's all right. I wanted to say that I really appreciate the idea of templates that can be personalized by the LEAs. I had the concern when I saw the guidelines for the implementation plan that there's this pressure on the LEAs to do the communications. And I worry that we would get 24 different messages stated in different ways. And if we can move quickly on this and give them the tools to help spread the news in a consistent way, yet flexible, that would be really appreciated.
Great, thank you.
Oops, Member Lynch.
I concur with what board member Stapleton was saying, and I think this is really important work, and so I thank you for that work, because I think when you talk to teachers, educators, parents, elected officials, everybody has the same view of what we really need to do in order to change the face of education in Maryland. And they involve things like high quality early education experiences, making sure everybody comes to school ready, making sure our teachers have the training and the pay that professional teachers deserve, and providing those wraparound resources for students and mental health services. And so everybody talks about this is what we need in education, and that is everything that is baked into this blueprint. And so people don't often, there's a disconnect in what people are still saying that they need and what is here in this plan and what can be transformative. So I appreciate that hard work. I do agree that it will be important for LEAs to both customize, but also to have some standardization in that message. And then I think one of my questions is, it seems like a stakeholder that may be baked into your community stakeholder group are our elected officials, our councilmen and delegates and senators and local school board members, who really have put a lot of work and effort into having the blueprint come to fruition. But how are they helping them have conversations with the community, helping them understand how this is looking boots on the ground and what is working really well, I think is important, because it aligns so well with so many other initiatives that are happening at the state level, ending child poverty, trying to address, juvenile safety. So, there are so many things that are happening that work together in this blueprint that I think would be helpful for our elected officials and our board members to also have that language to speak to their constituents about.
Great. Yeah, totally agree. Thank you.
Maura, if I may just jump in there, because I think this is a theme, less so explicit in the messaging as this notion that the blueprint is not happening to us. We're doing it together and we are all in this together. So this idea of giving people the information and the support and sort of the ability to have flexibility in how they want to deliver it in a way that's authentic and genuine is something we're really striving for in the work.
Vice Chair Kerwin.
Yes. So I want to, I was very pleased to see that you're developing basically a toolkit, if I may call it that, for principals and superintendents, et cetera. How will we get that disseminated? What's the dissemination strategy so that we get this in the hands of people that need to do the work? That's one question. I have one other question or comment.
Sure. So in terms of in the principal deck specifically, working with our key messengers. So I've been speaking with the heads of the principal associations and getting their input and take on what materials needs to be in there. And then the blueprint coordinators who are, in each of the districts working with them as well, who are eager to be able to provide this to their folks. And then working with, AIB's channels as well. But those are some specifically, as well as the teachers union has been offered to help promote and distribute materials as well. So those are some of the key channels that we'll be tapping, as well as our own social media, alerting folks that these materials are now available and where they can find them. But yeah, really using many of those key messengers and associations and affinity groups that I mentioned.
So you have means of communicating with these folks to get that spread.
Yeah, they all know me now at this point.
Good. That's I'm thrilled to hear that. That's very good.
Yeah. So there has been a lot of relationship building with these organizations and members to, share what we're trying to do, joining their sessions on monthly basis or as needed when we can present some of the things that we're working on, workshopping with them to see how this works, what doesn't work, what else do we need to see here, and then incorporating that. So it certainly takes a little bit longer, but I think that's a really critical step, because if people receive something that they don't like, they're not going to share it onward. So making sure that what we're getting, integrates, can't take every piece of information all the time, but sort of reflects in general the feedback that we're taking on this.
Yeah. One concern that I have is that we and it's important that we get focused on the implementation and all the things we've been talking about, but it's also important that we have finely honed messages on why we're doing this, sort of at a 30,000 foot. What's the ROI for, this is not just the latest, greatest reform effort that, follows on a previous one, and there'll be another one in a few years, or so on and so forth. I mean, this is a major transformation for a certain reason.
Yep.
And, what's the big picture message we need to arm people with that. And I think a group that we really need to target with that message is the county councils and the county executives, because they're the ones that are now grumbling and complaining, how are we going to find the money to do this, and we can't do it, and so on and so forth. But they need to, we need to try to get the information and help them understand that, this isn't easy, but here's the benefit. Here's what's going to happen if we are successful in doing this down the road. So I think they especially need this 30,000 foot why we're doing it message.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
And if I can just, and I think Member Lynch, that was a really good point that you also made, that we should, whether we do a separate document for county officials info, or just share the resources we have. I think that's really important. I just wanted to, it prompted me to just say that in the vein of working with our county elected and staff officials and helping them understand the blueprint and answer their questions, AIB and MSDE are co-hosting a convening next week with MACO for county officials. And so this is the first convening we've done with the counties. And so we are really glad to be doing it, and hopeful that it's going to be very productive and constructive, and just the first of many. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, let me mention one other thing that I'm aware of. I don't know if it'd be useful to you or not, but back when the commission completed its report, some business leaders funded a study by Sage Communications. The head of that is Anibal Basu, who has some visibility around the state as an economic forecaster. And he did an analysis about what the impact of the blueprint would be on the state in terms of decreased incarceration rates, lower Medicaid expenditures, higher tax revenues because of increased salaries from a better educated workforce, et cetera, et cetera. And it showed a pretty remarkably fast ROI for the investment. So I don't know whether if you've seen it or if you feel that would be useful, we could try to dig up that report.
It actually is has been updated. And I thought that I had shared it, but I'm looking for it now. It was actually I know at one point I saw it on Strong Schools Maryland's website. But I will share that with everyone.
Are you all aware of that report?
Yeah.
You are. Okay, so you've got that. That's great. I think it could help in sort of tailoring and honing our message on why we're doing this.
Yep. Agreed, especially for particular audiences.
Right.
Sometimes that,
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Doss?
Thank you. And just to sort of add on to Member Curran's point about our ROI, I like to, when I'm trying to sell something or when I'm trying to actually showcase a program, I like to have the folks who are actually impacted do a road show for me. So if we have teachers or students or superintendents or workforce development folks actually come out and talk about how the blueprint has impacted them thus far, whatever it is in their area, so that we have real people actually talking about it. In addition to everyone learning about it or reading about it. So I don't know if we ever get to that point.
Yeah, it's definitely something, particularly in social media. I mean, whether, and then in-person events would also be amazing, but starting sort of in the immediate of highlighting success stories and social. I know Rachel A. was highlighting some successes around Pillar 1 and early childhood that we'll be promoting as well. But yes, I think the testimonials and success stories, whether we can do that in media outreach, social media, and then, yeah, ideally love to get, in-person people talking to one another about it is things we're certainly building up to. But yeah, I totally agree that that's an effective strategy. And I should mention too, we've got sort of a subset of our collaborative team here today, and then we have a broader team and new folks joining as well, who are bringing some new digital expertise and others and perspectives that we're eager to continue to sort of what we were talking about today is sort of where we are in this, and are eager to see this our communications efforts being able to get more diverse and complex and engaging as we go. Well, great. Well, we look forward to sharing these materials with you. And as you see them, if you have ways that you think they can be improved upon or added to or done a little bit differently, we're always eager and open to all feedback and comments and reactions. So yeah, I think you all have our contact information, but I'll put it in the chat. But please feel free to reach out to us with any ideas or questions, or, hey, I saw this article, how come we're not in it, or things like that, because we're open to all ideas here, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so very much. Any further questions or comments? If not, Rachel will go on to our next item, which I think we're scheduled to go on to executive session.
We are. Before we do that, just a couple of things. I meant to say at the top that that we did receive written comment from Strong Schools Maryland, which you all have and which we will post on the website. And I think they will be speaking to us at our next meeting. And then also just to note for the public that the agenda includes a draft meeting schedule for the monthly AIB meetings in 2024. And so the next scheduled meeting is January 18th, but the entire schedule is available to everyone.
Okay. I thought you mentioned it earlier, but good to recover it again. Yeah.
I may have. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And we will adjourn from the closed session.
Yes. So I think if Ms. Dutter would read the motion, and if I could also ask Shawanda to put the link in the chat just so everyone has it before they scatter.
Sure thing. For the last agenda item, the board expects to perform an administrative function and receive legal advice from counsel pursuant to sections 3-103 and 3-305B7 of the General Provisions Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland. The motion is to close this meeting and then subsequently to adjourn from closed session.
Okay, the motion is before us. Any question or discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposite? None? We're going to join for a recess for 5 minutes. And I'm sorry, it's 3:53. We're going back at 4 p.m. sharp, about 7 minutes. Okay? Thank
Great.
you. Rachel, we stay on here or we go back? It's
Thank you. The link is in the chat. Let me put
Okay.
it in for you. It's also on the agenda.
gotcha.
Uh,
Okay. Yeah,
okay.
thank